Hello everyone, this is Arturelia Film Reviews, and I have Cyns Corner here. Today we're going to be reviewing Wonder Woman and Wonder Woman 84. Now, double feature. Well, yeah, there are going to be some differences between these two. They have both different feels to them.
Shooter quits.
But don't you think it's time to start my training? I'm tired of things ain't ready.
Does she?
So the first film is set during World War I. You have Wonder Woman, who has grown up for how long? Maybe thousands of years.
She's thousands of years old.
Yeah. And she's lived there for basically those thousands of years.
In Themyscira.
Yeah.
And she's very naive because she's been sheltered
from the world.
Because she doesn't know what her mother knows, like the past and all that stuff.
But one fateful day, this always happens in every recreation of Wonder Woman.
Mm-hmm. Pretty much, yeah.
Trevor's, right?
Steve Trevor.
Steve Trevor crashes his World War I plane in her island, but in the meantime, there's Germans after him, and there's a bit of a fight here and there. So then they interrogate him, saying that, and he says that he's a spy, but he wasn't one to say he's a spy, but they have the lasso around him, so he's got to say he's a spy.
I'm a spy!
I am a spy!
And so she ends up wanting to go with him to the outside world for what? Just
to help
with the war.
Also because the god of Ares, she suspects that the god of Ares is behind everything that's happening with all this war and destruction and death, and so she's wants to go and try to stop him and help mankind.
Yeah, that's basically the gist. And when she gets to man's world, she's pretty interested in almost everything. Little babies. Doesn't really fit into society.
Everything is different. She can't go through a revolving door very easily. She has to strategize. That was one of the funnier scenes.
She has her sword in one hand
and her shield in the other.
And goes through.
That was so funny, that scene. That tickled me.
Well, yeah, she's basically learning. And then you end up finding out, at least behind the scenes, there's been some stuff going on. Now, on the villain side, the villains have their motives and want to basically keep the war going, except using poison gas, which was, yes, used in the war.
Mm-hmm.
But other than that, the plot is pretty simple.
I mean, Wonder Woman. It's not anything super
And on
intricate.
top of that, it's not overly feminist.
Yeah, I know, which I was really happy for.
But, so character-wise, yeah, Wonder Woman, she doesn't know much about the outside world until she goes out. She's strong. She knows combat because she was trained.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's a point where her character literally breaks and kind of goes on this rampage. But I don't want to say why she goes on this rampage. She just goes on a rampage for a bit. So Steve Trevor is the love interest with Wonder Woman. And you know his character from the 70s show, except this is World War I. Trevor.
Well, in the comics, I mean, he's been around since the beginning.
He just wants to do the right thing by figuring out stuff that's going on with what was it had to do with the gas and stuff.
He thinks that I can't even remember the German soldier's name. He thinks that Ludendorff, is that his name?
Maybe.
He thinks that he's got something planned, and he thinks it involves something with gas. I think because he stole the diary or something.
Oh yeah, he was somewhere in Turkey, I think, that he found.
He just doesn't know when, and he doesn't know where exactly.
Basically alerting his allies. But he gets involved with Wonder Woman, and then he has a group of people that actually work with him. Mm-hmm. The Indian guy, the Scottish, the Indian.
You said Indian already.
Well, not okay. Well, Native American guy, but
yeah,
Indian.
I know.
But then there's the other guy with the
Scottish
hat.
guy. Oh, and then the Middle Eastern looking
Middle Eastern looking guy. Yeah,
that was just the three, right? Plus Steve and Diana.
And then on top of that, the girl. Well, she kind of. She's not in the
Etta
comic.
Candy.
Yeah,
she's like the secretary.
Yeah, she's not really.
Yeah, she doesn't go on the mission with them.
But yeah, and to be honest, most of them have interesting backs, or at least some of their characteristics are interesting. We don't get too much about them, but enough to actually get invested with them.
Yeah, I think so.
The villains, on the other hand, not as much. They're kind of just the typical wanting to continue this thing. Now, maybe what's her name?
The scientist?
The scientist. Maybe you could say she wants this thing to go on with science. just
she's
learn more.
motivated by the science of it.
Yeah.
She's fascinated by
Maybe
the
she's
science
a little
of
more
it.
maybe slightly interesting than the main guy, like the main villain, but
Yeah,
not
Ludendorff
still.
is just,
Yeah,
kind of
he's
seems
just,
like your
just
typical bad guy. Doesn't have a huge amount of
He
depth.
just wants to keep the war going on. Maybe not surrender.
Yeah,
I
he
mean,
doesn't want to
after all,
surrender.
Germany was losing, but
Yeah.
There is also another third party at hand. Would you say third party? Well, maybe second party, because it's
Third
only...
party.
Okay, never mind. Third party, but we don't want to go any further than that, otherwise we spoil everything.
Well,
let's just say there's another third party, somewhat involved, but not
alluded
involved.
to throughout the whole thing anyway.
Sort
That's
of involved, but not involved at the
Yeah.
same time. 50-50?
Sort of, kind of.
Maybe yes, no, or a little bit of both.
A little bit of both. It's the best of both worlds.
Overall, I actually liked how the film looked. Just that gritty time period of the 1910s, during the war, during all that chaos. It's got that gloom look.
Yeah.
Gray, not too happy.
Well, the color palette or the color theme changes. On Paradise Island, it's nice and bright and beautiful
out in
and
our
colorful.
world,
And
it's
then when
not
she goes
looking-
out, it's every scene pretty much that takes place in the outside world is kind of a gray, overcast, gritty.
I mean,
dark,
she literally
depressing.
said London looked ugly.
I mean, it did look ugly compared to Paradise Island, or Themyscira is what they officially
Welcome
call
to
it.
jolly old London. Looks ugly.
Not for everyone.
The way the editing seemed fine too. I hadn't really
And
didn't see
the
no
fight scenes were so good.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh,
Slow
the No
motion,
Man's Land scene.
No Man's Land, yeah.
That scene still gives me chills.
It's just too bad they didn't have her in that day and age.
I know, right? Dang it. She could have helped save the world.
She could have helped save millions of lives. Can you imagine?
I know.
But yeah, the film looked fine to me. Otherwise, I literally did enjoy this film. I like the historic aspect. A lot of people don't know too much about World War I because it's overshadowed by the Second World War. Because World War I, what were they fighting for? I mean, there was a lot of political reasons, but was it really worth it? No.
Well,
I mean, it changed. It changed.
It led to World War II.
I mean,
problem,
okay. The
so.
only thing that really was important about the war, technology, the countries were made, like Poland, and a few others over in the eastern side, I think. Well, yeah, it just changed the aspect of warfare.
Oh yeah, with the chemical war.
Well, that was a big no-no. But no, the Germans went and did it anyway.
You gave me a little history lesson in that scene when Steve Trevor was escaping that place
Yeah,
where he'd gone into.
Well, I said it to you while we were watching.
You
the
said it
movie.
to me while we were watching it, and I have warm fuzzies thinking about watching that movie. That was such a fun day.
Fun night.
I loved it.
Night.
Oh yeah.
And then we watched Toonami right after that.
well,
That was a Saturday night too.
Oh, I forgot about
It was
Toonami because
Toonami,
I just Wonder Woman is first and
I
foremost
think
in my
what
mind.
was
But
on?
the history lesson you
Attack
gave
on Titan was on at
Oh,
the
was
time.
it?
Season 2 was.
I didn't like that too. You gave me
I
the
didn't
history.
like it. Okay,
you gave me a
fine.
history lesson about how he had to actually
you had to
physically
drop
take
bombs,
his hand,
yeah.
hold the bomb, and drop it down.
Yeah, I mean, I liked it. I thought the story was well done.
Oh yeah.
Wonder Woman is. I mean, I liked Wonder Woman since I was younger. I still like Wonder Woman. She's badass.
Yeah.
And she's not really that much of a Mary Sue like Rey Skywalker. Well,
let's not.
wait, who's Rey Skywalker? What did I just say?
Well, what I was concerned about when she was going to come to film was I was concerned when her movie happened. I was really down on Gal Gadot, like I said, when they picked her. But then when I saw Batman vs. Superman, I was blown away. I was so excited to see her, and I felt very, very optimistic about her portrayal in the movie. Then the movie comes out, and I was really afraid it was going to be a lot of male bashing, sort of feminist narrative going on, and it really, if there was any feminist type narrative, it was coming from the Amazons because they just are kind of cynical.
Well,
that
but
way.
they're aren't they supposed to be like that anyway?
Yeah,
so
but it
you
wasn't,
can kind of look past that.
My concern was that they were going to make her that way, and she wasn't at all. And I was so happy when that became clear to me. After
With the one line, there was one specific line.
That one scene after they liberated the town.
Yeah,
So I was very happy. I was so pleased, and this movie ended up in my top 10.
Mm-hmm. Now, Wonder Woman 84. This is a different story.
Yeah.
So, It takes place in 1984, probably a great year for pop culture, movies. One of your favorite series of all time, which I think Justice League, is beating it now.
No, it hasn't beaten it.
Yeah,
it hasn't beaten it.
I think it's beating it now, but a lot of great things in '84. But this plot in this, she's still living in man's world, but she's been behind the scenes of historical events, but.
She does her stuff in secret as much as she can. She lives in seclusion because everybody that she was attached to in the first movie, they're gone now.
Yeah,
she outlived them all, obviously.
But she's just she helps once in a while.
She's lonely. She misses Steve still.
Yeah, she just wants a pal.
Well, because some people didn't understand why she still had this huge hang up for Steve all these decades later. But the thing is, so. She's a demigod. She's going to be different from a typical human, right? Mm-hmm. And as someone, it was I think it was Film Speak or something. I watched this essay he did about A Beautiful Lie, that theme that goes through those movies, and he was saying how that her connection and her love for Steve is what kind of. I don't want to say necessarily gave her humanity, but grounded her in the world of man and showed her that mankind has all this humanity and love for others and self-sacrifice, and that was just this very strong connection that she had. So I can see why she grieved and mourned for decades over his loss.
But she's basically working at some place. What they do, kind of like
she's like she works at the Smithsonian, some sort of
museum,
historical artifact type place.
And she meets this character that you will know is a specific, I guess, main villain for Wonder Woman.
And it was no secret who was going to be in here, so you can mention.
She's really clumsy. She's kind of awkward.
Kind of a sympathetic character.
Yeah. You feel sorry for her because she just doesn't fit in, which I could understand. And then you have the businessman that kind of just wants to succeed. He has his motive for why he wants. Now, to be honest. Well, we'll get to the characters in a sec. But I would say the whole point is, in the plot, there's a specific thing that could allow you to have wishes. Now, Wonder Woman wishes for one specific thing. And
the theme is, be careful what you wish for.
Yeah.
Basically.
Because if you wish for too much
That's the moral of the story.
Yeah. Otherwise, I don't want to go into too much details about the plot either, but it's a different time. But the thing is, let's go to the way the film looks and edits. Well, the editing seems fine. I had really no issues with the editing there, but the quality, the aspect of the film, the coloring. Since this is the 80s, I always view I usually view years in colors, and the 80s was kind of like this bright yellowish time. You can tell the color aspect here is kind of bright. A little bit brighter than World War I.
It definitely has a different tone to it. Because also you have to remember at this point, this movie was more firmly and completely in Patty Jenkins' hands. In the first movie, the studio had a lot more control over what she did. Like, she wanted to leave out the big bad fight scene at the end, and the studio basically forced her to include it. She didn't want to. But I think that now, studio's not always right about stuff.
But they were right about that.
But in my opinion, that was important. But Patty Jenkins, it did seem like in the second Wonder Woman that she wanted to rein back Diana's pure power and wanted her not to be so much of a warrior. She wanted her to be more of a peacemaker. I mean, there were some quotes Patty Jenkins said about how Wonder Woman wouldn't punch somebody and blah, blah, blah. Meanwhile, they were interspersing her comments about that with scenes from Justice League where Wonder Woman was kicking ass and punching people and throwing them into the walls. And she was doing that in the first movie, too.
Yeah.
She didn't hold back.
But,
so she was toned down in this
Let's just say, the only thing you're going to get with the film, I'm not going to go into more plot details, but this is kind of how she's introduced, the introduction of how she flies.
Yeah. And the invisible jet.
It's just more brighter, slightly lighthearted sometimes. Like, just the whole feel to the film. But then it got, it's
pretty serious, though.
Obviously, the best scene in the film is a chase scene, which I don't want to go into detail about that either because once you've experienced it yourself. Now, yeah, the characters, we know Wonder Woman, we know a so-and-so, but you know, obviously the sympathetic woman that's awkward, which she gets what she wants, but at a cost. The businessman, same deal, but you can kind of sympathize a little bit, but not. I mean, he goes too far with
obviously.
What he wants. But what I was gonna say is that besides the villains in the first film that were just typical, the villains in here actually had more depth.
To me, they did.
Yeah.
Honestly, that was one of the things that I noticed when I was watching it, was that, wow, these villains, you can actually sort of identify with them a little bit. Now, the main bad guy, you don't really start to sympathize with him. Well, you do sort of, because of the interactions with his son, but then when you see flashbacks of his backstory, and you kind of, you feel a little bad for the guy. I mean, you recognize he's done some terrible things, but what makes a villain really good, in my opinion, is when you take them and humanize them in some way, and you make them relatable. You make people understand why they've done what they've done, even though you don't condone it. Like Steppenwolf, he was definitely much more sympathetic in Justice League.
Yeah. Or the Snyder Cut. Not the standard
in the Snyder
version,
Cut, yeah. I don't even want to count that other one anymore. CGI, you could tell that the CGI wasn't as good.
The CGI, you could, like, some of the stuff in this film doesn't look as crisp as in the first one.
Like what, for example? Because people had mentioned bad CGI, and I didn't really notice it that
I don't
terribly.
know, maybe it was the way it was done. More like the background. Sometimes I thought some of the visuals were not that great.
Okay.
It's not that they were bad, but you could tell they were a low quality than previously.
I also heard that the people in charge of the special effects and stuff, that changed hands as well to somebody that Patty Jenkins herself wanted, and maybe it wasn't the best choice.
Yeah, so you kind of lose quality a bit there.
I enjoyed Wonder Woman 84. A lot of people hated on it, which surprised the heck out of me because I didn't read or watch any reviews.
I was seeing a lot of that, yeah.
I mean, I had heard that there were undertones of woke narrative or anti-Trump political bias, but there was really wasn't. But I didn't pick up on that. I didn't even pick up on the
well, maybe the businessman.
He didn't even remind me of Trump at all.
Maybe
it just, I honestly, and I went there looking for it because I had sort of heard about things like that, but it really wasn't there. I think a lot of people.
Yeah, I mean, even I didn't really think too much about that. I didn't really see that. I mean, maybe if you looked in depth, maybe. But
I think it's
don't know.
Getting more hate than it deserves. Just like I felt like Batman vs Superman.
Oh yeah, Batman vs Superman. I do like Batman vs Superman, but overall, I mean, I enjoyed the film. I felt like they did, well, for me, since I'm a history junkie, I feel like they messed up a lot of history in 84, man. Well, how come we didn't hear about this? How come we didn't hear all the wishes? How come we didn't hear how the world was in chaos? But, no, I mean, I enjoyed it for what it was. I mean, obviously, Wonder Woman was badass with that golden suit.
Yeah, I'm not crazy about that, too. But there was a cool cameo in the credits.
Oh, yeah, that was cool.
Very cool cameo.
So, Wonder Woman and Wonder Woman 84. Now, I am going to say this. I feel like you could technically lay out 84 and pretend that it didn't exist, or you could put it in there. It's either or, like, people that didn't like it.
It's standalone.
You could like, sort of? Yeah, you could pretend it never happened, but you know. Okay, I personally enjoyed it, but I do agree that the first one's better.
Yeah, I think the first one's better. That's not consistent, in other words.
Then I will say...
I love the movie. I mean, it's in my top 10.
Awesome on it.
Okay.
I mean, it is. It was awesome.
It was. It was such a fun movie.
Well, 84... I liked it, but it wasn't as good as the first one.
So you say good.
It's decent. I'll put
decent.
I feel like there's something about the second one that just doesn't live up to the first one.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I can understand why people were disappointed with it to some degree, but the amount of hate it has gotten, I just don't, I can't, I don't get it. But they're both fun films. I mean, and Gal
And like I
Gadot
said-
is an amazing Wonder Woman. She was a wonderful pick.
Like I said, you could also leave off 84 and pretend it didn't happen. Because to be honest, lately I've been thinking about it. I'm like, yeah, you know, you could just brush that aside and just have the first Wonder Woman and you'll be okay.
Well, because the first Wonder Woman is also directly connected with the Snyderverse, basically.
Yeah,
Ties
like
into Batman
84,
versus
it just feels
Superman.
like it almost doesn't fit well with the other stuff.
It's a standalone movie. It's standalone in this way. So.
That's why I say you could leave it out if you want, but other than that...
Well, I'm going to buy it for my collection. At some point.
Well, you could go check my mom where she does reactions where she laughs, she cries, or a little bit of both. Or
I don't cry that often.
She freaks out. She freaks out over the best things like Justice League.
Such a
I
good
do
movie.
think, yeah. See, I think
ago
Terminator
today.
has been defeated, y'all.
No, it hasn't.
Terminator
It
2
hasn't
has been defeated by Justice
No.
League. Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
I win.
No, it really hasn't been. But I do love Justice League. It is in my top 10 now. It's bumped Warrior.
So it's number 10.
No, not necessarily number 10, but to insert it, something gets bumped. So
Bumped
Warrior,
out of the ring. Ding,
Warrior
ding,
got
ding.
bumped.
Stay here. I'll go ahead.